I think we're ready to get going. We've got 84 people in the call. I think that's pretty close to what we average on a typical night. So we'll go ahead and get started. We have a special guest speaker with us, Clark. Clark is a candidate engagement manager at LaunchCode, so same job that I have. And Clark will be managing your Liftoff program. So Clark's here to tell us a little bit about Liftoff. What is Liftoff? What's the process like? And what actions you might need to take in the near future. Clark, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Awesome. Could whoever's the Sean or Greg, could you make me a co-host so I can screen share the slides?
Absolutely. Here you go.
Oh, Kyle. Perfect.
Yep.
So I, like Greg said, I am a candidate engagement manager. I was actually in the first ever class of Code Camp that Greg managed, so I'm a LaunchCode grad. So I graduated from LaunchCode about a year and a bit ago, did an apprenticeship, decided that there was some other work I wanted to be doing, took some time working for some elections, and then joined the LaunchCode team as a candidate engagement manager back in November. So right now I am managing Liftoff, which is the next stage of your LaunchCode journey. So let me pull up these slides for you all. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so.
New tabs.
Yes, I know, and I just hit the wrong thing. I have too many tabs. It's not good. But, you know, we all have our vices. So you all are pretty close to being done with this class, and I'm sure it can't come soon enough for most of you. So we have a next step, and that is Liftoff. It is your transition from being a student to being a professional developer. And so what's next for you? Not quite yet. You're not doing Liftoff quite yet. First, you have to finish the assignments, graduate, and Liftoff is the process by which you build a project and prepare yourself to start the job search. So it's, so these are my reminders. I don't know much more about this, so ask Greg about the any specific questions you have about assignments. The general thing is you have to have every single assignment completed. Ignore exam in there. This is, last time I presented this slide deck, this was for a class that had exams. You all don't panic. All you need is a 1 out of 1 on every assignment. And I am going to, as a former TA, I am going to make an ask on behalf of your TAs. Please be kind and don't make them grade your assignments at 10 p.m. on April 1st. They will not want to do that. They probably won't do that at all if they have healthy boundaries. So the deadline is April 1st at midnight, and those have to be a 1 out of 1. That means your best practice is going to be to get them in to be graded prior to that, so that they can be graded, marked complete. Any edits you need to be made can be made. So keep that in mind, mark it in your calendars, whatever you need to do. Looking forward, you have a few assignments left. I think you all are on assignment 3 or 4. Okay, 4. So only 1 to go, but it's a little bit of it's actually not that bad. I shouldn't scare you. It's fine. So finish up that, finish up anything remaining from unit 2. And then while you do that, stop thinking about Capstone Project ideas. I know it's hard to start thinking about it when you don't really know what it is, but start thinking about problems you have that you think could be solved by code, that you think you could take what you've learned and apply it. So, graduation. Your graduation info is April 5th, 2021. It is a really good time. Like, I attend most of them, even for people I don't, classes that I haven't been involved in. And it's really nice. I am the worst cynic in the world and still love them. They're heartwarming, they're lovely, and you really should celebrate. You guys, you all have done something difficult during a pandemic, and you should celebrate that. And that includes if you haven't finished. If you have gotten to April 1st and you can't finish it, that's fine. You still should celebrate. You still got through all the way through Unit 1. You've learned a lot now. You should come. Greg will have more details on that. Greg, address any questions you have specifically about graduation to Greg. I want to step in a second and just, if there's any questions, I can't see the chat when I'm presenting. So if Greg or Kyle could just butt in if there's anything I need to address. So next, your capstone project. I alluded to this earlier. So why we have you do it. Like I said, it's really the way to transition from being a student getting handed pieces of code and being asked to complete them and being a professional developer. And honestly, it's a way of proving what you know. We can verify that you completed it. You get a really fancy certificate that you can print out and wallpaper all over your walls. That's great. But even for traditionally trained coders, employers don't just want to see like a degree or a certificate. Employers want to see the projects that you've done. So they want to see what you can do with this knowledge you have. And frankly, it's really fun. I think my favorite part of Launch Code was completing my project. It was a chance for me to like think back through my experiences in the past and be creative and learn things. There were things that I knew that I wanted to put into my project that we hadn't learned in class yet. And I figured out how I could learn them. I figured out where I wanted to take it. And I also learned what I liked and didn't like about coding. So it's a really great experience. It feels overwhelming right now, but I promise we scaffold it and we help you get through it. So the other more practical thing is it's part of our apprenticeship, our vetting for apprenticeship candidates. When you go into the apprenticeship program, we have essentially taken a step out of the traditional job search process. So when you do a job search, right, you have to prove to the employers everything you know. But we are being that first step for employers. We are saying, we vetted you. We know you're a good candidate. We know you know your stuff. And how you show me that so I can show employers that is through your project. Functionally what it looks like. It's most often a web app with 3 to 5 features. Some people deviate a little bit. If you have other ideas for things, please let us know. But that's traditionally what it is. And if you go into the Liftoff curriculum, which is available at learn.launchcode.org, education.launchcode.org, very similar. Why do we have these as synonyms? I don't know. If you go to education.launchcode.org, you can look at the full Liftoff curriculum, and in that Liftoff curriculum are some example projects that you can look at and kind of get an idea on the scope and scale of what you want to do. Traditionally, I think prior to about 2016, 2017, students did this on their own. You finished up the Java curriculum, you finished up C#, and we told you, okay, build a project, come back, show it to us, you'll enter the apprenticeship program. Spoiler alert, that was not good. It's hard to build a project. It's hard to go from where you're at now to a completed project. A lot of students spun their wheels. A lot of people had trouble doing it. And it did not result in the best projects, the best experience, or the most efficient learning for you. So we developed the Liftoff curriculum. So that's why Liftoff exists. But that being said, you don't have to do Liftoff. If you don't, you probably should talk. If you're not going to do it, you might want to talk to Greg. You might want to talk to the TAs because, to be quite frank, there's not really an option. If you are planning on building a project, you are doing yourself a pretty great disservice by not doing Liftoff. But you can. We cannot force you into Liftoff. You can build a project on your own. If you're very driven, if you know exactly what you want to do, if you have experience building projects before, you can. But you can probably guess which I would encourage you to do, and that is to go through Liftoff. It is an organized introduction to project ideation, design, testing. You get a mentor, you get support, and you can have the option to work either as an individual project or on a more advanced, larger in scale and scope group project. Okay, so what exactly does Liftoff look like? It is an 8-week course. It provides you support, and it also allows you to learn and practice additional skills with related to development. And that includes things like live coding and agile best practices. If these words mean nothing to you, that's fine. We'll go through them. It's also a place where we provide you assistance with other job search skills. It's not just you developing as a programmer or coder. We also give you help, and you have resources for things like interviewing, resume building, and other job readiness skills. And finally, the other thing Liftoff is, it's a community. Something that I have talked to a lot about in the Liftoff I'm in right now, the Liftoff I'm currently working with, is that regardless of if you do a individual project or a project with a team, that community of Liftoff is key. Even if you all are building independent projects, even if everyone in your section with your mentor, you're all building your own project, but you all are going to face some of the same hurdles. You're going to have to figure out some weird quirk of Spring Boot. You're going to have to figure out something about user authentication, and you're going to bounce ideas off you. You're going to have your colleague tell you, oh, I did this and it worked really great. And then you're going to tinker with it. That community is really, really valuable, especially when you're going through a project that, quite frankly, if you get stuck, like, it's really frustrating. There's not an answer key you go to. So having that community to bounce ideas on, to support, to cheerlead, super valuable. Liftoff is going to be Thursdays, 5:30 to 8:30. It's an 8-week long class, but we do give you a break week, the week of May 6th, just to give you a little breathing room. First day is April 6th. The last day of that class will be April 8th, and the last day of that class will be June 6th. And this is something that's relatively new to Liftoff, is the option to do individual versus group project. I want to preface something because I've had a lot of questions about this. Regardless of if you do an individual project or a group project, you have a mentor section. So sometimes you'll hear me use groups simultaneously. I really need to find a thesaurus and look up a better word, because you will, regardless of if you do a project with a team of other people or a project individually, you will have a mentor group. So put that out there before I get a million questions, because I made that mistake once already. Individual project, that's traditional. That is what I did. I believe that's what Greg did. It is a traditional Liftoff structure. You have only yourself to blame if you get behind, but you also get the chance to work ahead too. And you have full creative control. You never have to compromise on your design decisions. But that being said, you never have to compromise on your design decisions, and that's very rarely going to happen in the real world. Unless you're going to be a freelancer, you will almost always be working in a group. So a lot of students like the group project because it's more similar to what they will experience as a professional developer. I'm going to scare you a little bit. If you opt into a group project, it means you may be in a group project. So think about it carefully first. The launch code survey will allow you to say group project, no group project. it's about 5 students, maybe a few more, maybe a few less, but 5 will be roughly. It prepares you for industry work. You're going to get very good at doing things, at working with Git specifically, because you're going to have to manage version control and workflow off that main branch. You're going to be doing a lot more with branching, with discussing features, with figuring out how your features interact with other features. And it also, you have a pre-built accountability system. You know that if you drop the ball on the features you have, you might be harming your colleagues, and that's a pretty powerful motivator to stay in class and stay on top of things. I say it's created via random assignment, but that's kind of a misnomer. In the Liftoff survey, you are allowed to say, hey, I have a really good rapport with this person. I'd really like to work with them. I will do my utmost to accommodate those requests. But if you don't have a pre-built group of 5, I'm going to fill it in. If the numbers don't work out, I may have to break you up. So you have an option to add people that you would like to work with, and I would love to get you to work with people you like and know you work well with. But it's a big old puzzle putting these groups together, and we do what we can. Sorry, that was my cat's tail you saw. We do what we can to accommodate, but we can't work miracles. Okay. And then, so after you've completed Liftoff, your next step is to land a job. You have 2 options. One is, if you didn't go through Liftoff, you have to go through, create a project, apply through the LaunchCode website. It's an application, and then you get an interview with Greg or me or any one of the other CEMs. Certainly an option. We have a ton of candidates come through that way. But you can save yourself that step. Completing the Liftoff program does the interview, does the resume review, and you have had your project checked. So if you complete Liftoff, we've done that work you've already done that work. You don't have to fill out an external application. You just have to fill out a final survey at the end of the course. And something that I think right now is especially important. You guys are going to talk to the company team next week. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions about them, for them, and you should be thinking about them. But something that we've been really emphasizing to students is the company team should act as your second brain. They should act as the arm. We are supporting you. We want you to get a job. We'll do everything we can to land you a job. But the reality of economics right now is that we're in a pandemic. We're getting out of a pandemic. So you should feel empowered to start your own job search as well. If you have more questions about that, address them to Greg, you can Slack me or DM me. Sorry, you can email me. I realize I'm not in your Slack. You can email me. My email's later in the presentation. But in general, how the apprenticeship program works. We want you to go through the apprenticeship program. It's a great program. But I also want to say, this is the second brain. The apprenticeship program process. During Liftoff, we mark you as job ready. You have to pass your behavioral interview. We look at your project. We look at your live coding. We say, okay, we know that this person has the skills and the ability to succeed in an apprenticeship. And then you join the apprenticeship candidate program. As job requests come in from our company partners, our company relation team connects candidates to those companies for interviews, and will send you an email saying, hey, we have this request from Centene. Are you interested in us submitting your resume? You say yes or no. I advise saying yes. And then once you're connected, you may have a chance to interview with the company. The interview process varies depending on companies. Sometimes it's as simple as a phone screen. Sometimes it's as complicated as multiple interviews. Every company is unique. When you land the interview, you complete and excel, because our LaunchCode candidates are great, an apprenticeship. And 4 out of 5 of our apprenticeships do convert to a full-time salaried position. So that's the general process. Like I said, if you have specific questions, we're going to go through this a lot more in depth in Liftoff, and also you will learn a lot more with the company team. But that's kind of the next couple months for you to start thinking about. During the apprenticeship search process, continue learning, continue building projects, continue building, doing Udemy or other online courses. Think about what you liked about Launch Code. Think about what you liked as a programmer. Do you love front end? Do you want to, expand on your Angular knowledge? Great, awesome, do that. Do you hate front end? Okay, maybe think about doing some more work in database administration. So start thinking about what you can practice, what you can build. And keep us updated. Well, keep the company team and your candidate engagement managers updated about what you've learned. Once we see that you're continuing to grow, we're gonna keep you in mind. We're gonna say, oh, we know we have this awesome candidate that, oh, you didn't learn React in Liftoff? Oh, but you learned it on your own? Okay, great. That I know that I have more jobs I can put you forward for. So keep us updated and keep learning. Coding is a second language, and if you stop practicing it, you are going to lose those skills. The other thing is practice your interview skills, hone your resume, network, get on LinkedIn, do all those things, do all the things to keep yourself in shape and representing yourself as well as possible. And then finally, keep positive. It's tough. It's really tough. The rejection hurts. I've been rejected from a lot of jobs. It's not fun. We will do our utmost, and you have to have faith that we want you all to succeed. How to join Liftoff. Complete the opt-in survey. It's pretty simple. It shouldn't take long. You have till March 11th for it. And opt-in is kind of a misnomer. I kind of want to know either way. So I'm not tracking you down or chasing you down. You have an option to say yes or no. So complete it. Tell me if you're going to join Liftoff or not. And then if you opt in, you will be enrolled in the Liftoff course, again, starting April 8th. And that's it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now so I can see the chat. But are there any questions?
Before we get to questions, I want to just answer one of them right up front. The survey will come out to you. I will be sending it via Slack. It will be in the announcements channel. By the end of the day today, there's still a little kink that we have to work out that I'm going to talk to Clark about right after we hop off of this call. But once we get that survey open, it will go in the announcements channel. I am also going to post it on Canvas as an announcement on Canvas so that anybody who is not paying attention to Slack, which would break my heart. I'm assuming you're all paying attention to Slack. But just in case, it'll be on Canvas as an announcement as well, so everybody will get an email alert. So don't panic if you don't see it right away. We're gonna have to work on fixing this little technical issue. Gotta love Google Forms. It'll be just a simple Google form response survey. And then we will move forward from there. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or post them in the chat. But we do want to get along to your lecture for tonight as soon as possible. So let's go ahead and try to limit our questions, remembering that we will have the company team coming in about a week to talk to you all about the apprenticeship. So try to keep your questions focused on Liftoff for Clark.
We love you, Clark.
I know Nesta, that's not just random. I wanted to address something that came up last time folks filled out the survey for me. We ask you for any ideas you might have for your project. You are not bound to those ideas. If you have an idea, great. It's mainly a question for you to start thinking about it. If you have no ideas, that's totally fine. And if you want to talk at any point about, like, is this a good idea or not? Yeah, Greg, most of your TAs have done projects. Greg's done a project. The biggest thing I think I see is people trying to take on too much. So think about scope. 3 to 5 features in 8 weeks is not very long. You're not going to create the next Facebook, as much as I would like you to, because I need a better platform. That's not evil. You're not going to create something huge. So think about scope, but think also about expandability. So start with like, what is your core that you want, and what can you add to it?
To it, like pizza.
You're just baiting me.
Yeah, this would be like, you can start out with a basic pizza, like something a Tostino's that you would get at the store, and then eventually you can upgrade it until it's as good as an Emo's pizza. You know, that's how this project will work. But you need a minimum viable product first.
Y'all are just trolling.
MVP. MVP.
Okay, if you have any questions, my email is justclark@launchcode.org. You can also message Greg. Sorry, Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot, but you can message Greg and Greg can pass them on to me.
Absolutely. Slack for me. My inbox is a hot mess, so let's keep it on Slack. Sorry. I did want to answer, I got one question about if for some reason you cannot do this Liftoff, can you enroll in a future Liftoff?
You can. That is an option. The next one will not be for a while, though. I don't believe we have another one scheduled until August. I believe the next one starts August 2nd. So that's a whole lot of time to go without it. So if you were gonna do this, that might, if you absolutely cannot attend, that might be a time where you need to talk to Greg and possibly me, and we might be able to help you figure out a plan to do a solely independent project. Just because that is a long time to go without coding.
Right, or have a plan for like coding every week, like, you know, working through some kind of curriculum where you can keep up with your skills. Because what you don't want is to go months without coding and then try to put together a portfolio project, because that would be extremely difficult. Okay, well, if we don't have any other questions, everybody give Clark a big round of applause. And a huge thank you to Clark for coming and talking to us about Liftoff. That was really helpful. Before I turn it back over to Sean, I do want to mention one thing. I'm going to speak more in detail about this. This is not related to Liftoff, so Clark, you're free to go. But I'm going to speak more about this on Monday. But we did just launch a student support. We recently launched a student support fund through Henrose Cares. So I'm going to have a little presentation for you on Monday, but the headline is that if you are facing an emergency situation and it would prevent you from being able to finish the class, there may be grants available that you could apply for to get financial assistance to be able to make it through the end of the class. I can't, this is not a situation where we can make any promises, but we do have funds available. Again, if you're facing an emergency situation, we don't want you to have to drop the class because you can't pay your electric bill or you can't pay rent this month. So if you have a situation like that and it's urgent, you can reach out to me. Otherwise, like I said, I'll talk about this more in detail on Monday. I think I should say, I haven't checked with Kyle yet, but planning to give a little bit of a presentation, 5 minutes on this on Monday. But I did want to put it out there in case anybody has a current situation that they believe will cause them to not be able to complete the class. There are some restrictions, so we would need to evaluate your situation. It's a case-by-case basis, and ultimately it's decided by Henrose Cares, which is a separate nonprofit that has provided the fund for, the platform for the funding. So I can help you with that application process, so can Gabrielle. If you have any questions, please reach out to me directly. And with that, I will turn it over to Kyle.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Clark. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. We already talked about it before, but like I said, I came into Launch Code through Liftoff, and I cannot speak more highly of it. It is an awesome program. Just want to make sure, can everyone hear me all right? We good?
Yes.
All good?
Yes.
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 We can hear you.
Sounds good. Yep, I just need 100 okays and yeses, please. All right. So let's get started. I'm getting that sharing. Go. And play from start. Fantastic. All right. Okay, so I never actually know this from Zoom. Can you guys see the icons on the far right that has like my face as well as everyone else's face?
Yeah.
You can? Okay.
Not on your screen.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do that then. Because I never know that. All I'm doing is one screen today, so I won't be able to see everybody's face. So if you do want to talk or anything like that, feel free to speak up. Also, go ahead and use that lecture questions channel. But other than that, let's get started. How is everybody doing? Everybody doing okay? Everybody doing great? I heard Missouri has good weather. I'll be back there Monday, so I'm pretty excited.
Oh yeah, it's been beautiful, man. It's been beautiful.
I am not in Vegas. This time I am in Arizona. I am.
So much. It's wild.
Is that where the vortexes are?
What was that?
No, I'm thinking of New Mexico.
No, it's the Sedona. I'm gonna be going off the grid just for a little bit more this weekend on going to check out Sedona for a bit. So it was just really weird that all these happened. They were planned last year. So yeah, anyway, Arizona today. But I hear basically Missouri has that same exact weather. So I'm excited to come back. Getting to the actual point today, Thursday here on this lecture 13, we have now gone through 13 classes together. I'm very excited about this, and we have finally moved on to databases and SQL. Can anyone tell me who the image is on the far right?
Lieutenant Commander Data.
Data, right? I was like, what am I going to use as a GIF for this one? And so I have Data. I've never actually seen Star Trek, though being a true nerd, I feel like I should have. But finally got to see it like a few. I know! Thank you. I'm happy you guys are all awake today. I'm very excited for this class.
Revoke your card.
I know, right? I was forced to watch it by a past roommate a little bit ago, like 2 years ago. So I have now seen every single episode somehow. But yes, Lieutenant Data here. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive into databases and SQL here. Before we do that, as always, we're going to have just a quick announcement. We are going to be stepping into assignment number 4. That means that assignment number 3 should be all done, taken care of, graded. If you do still have those knowledge gaps, if you still have those questions, reach out to the TAs, reach out to fellow colleagues, reach out to me, and get that going, because assignment 4 is going to take it the same project in a slightly different direction. And we'll start learning about that today. Before we actually do that, we know that we had to cover 2 chapters for this lecture, the first one being enums. Before we actually dive into what that is, let's go ahead and take a look at a list of our favorite things. As always, we like to talk about pets here. So we have dogs, we have cats, and we have rabbits this time, because that's the only icon I could find. So these are 3 typical pets. As we know as a human, pets and just like any kind of animal in general comes natural to us. That's how we see things. We see them in objective form like this, because we're human. But as developers, we work with a completely different kind of system, a computer. So when a computer looks at a dog, it looks at a cat, it looks at a rabbit, it has no idea what it's talking about. Because computers, as we all know, like numbers. Ones, zeros, any kind of equation. That's what they deal with. So we have a lot of lists that we deal with in day-to-day life. We have our list of pets. We have a list of months. We have a lot of different things that are set standards. So we know that these aren't going to change. So what we can do to take a human readable list, like say months or our favorite types of pets, and bring them into more of a computer speak, is that we use enumerators. Better yet, what we do is assign these things to numbers, creating a list of numbers that is assigned to more of a human readable form, helping us create a better structure. Let's look at this a little bit closer, actually creating an enumerator. So we say public, enum, and then whatever we want it to be. In this case, it is pet types. And then we provide our list here that stays as an absolute structure. Once we create this enumerator, we can't add more pet types to this list. We can't remove them. It stays just like this. When we create this in Java, it continues going on and assigns numbers to each of these. So like it said in that past example, dog would be 0, cat would be 1, rabbit would be 2. Now, we're not going to go through too many specific examples with this tonight. I really just wanted to just quickly introduce you all to enums because they do provide great structure in your Java programs, and they will be absolutely beneficial here in the future. Like the example said on our reading, days of the week can be spelled completely different. So Monday can be MON as the abbreviation, or can be actually Monday. We don't want to have all these different possibilities in there, so we create more of a structure, aka an enumerator, to contain those to help us out in our program. Now, this is again a very, very brief introduction into the enums. So any questions that anyone had on these that they would want me to answer right now? If not,
It's enum.
I'm sorry.
I thought it was enum. It's called.
Oh, well, you'll hear me say data or data. So enum or I just say enum because it. All right, this is really nerdy. But ever remember Teletubbies? My favorite character of the entire Teletubby series was Noom Noom, and so I'm pretty sure that's why I say enums, because for some reason I was obsessed with vacuums as a child. So there's my nerd card coming back into style. But I'm pretty sure that's why I say it. But feel free to say enums, enumerators if you want to be fancy. So hopefully that answers that question. It's because I'm a true nerd.
Thank you so much for that anecdote. It was beautiful.
You're absolutely welcome. I called all vacuums Noom Nooms when I was a kid.
Oh my God.
Getting personal. All right. Anyway, besides my backstory, any other questions about enums? All right. Well, then let's dive into the actual meat of this entire presentation / lecture. And we're going to talk about data or data, depending on what you want to call it. So we're going to start where we've always started before in this section. We have a UI. We're building websites for our users. We all know our user interface, that UI. And who does it talk to?
Controller.
It talks to the controller. Absolutely. It talks to our Java server. So Java server, our controllers, that MVC thing that we're doing over there, that's who it's talking to. And we send over requests. The controller deals with the request. And then what does it send back to our UI?
Response.
Very good, a response. So we have requests coming into our server and we're sending back responses. So this has been our typical structure that we work with for the past few weeks. So moving on, we have our UI, we have our Java server. But as you probably have already noticed, every time you shut down your server and restart it, that data just dissipates, it disappears, never to be seen again. And we know that majority of our applications we have out there typically save our data. As you know, if you log into your bank account, unfortunately, the amount of money that we have is remembered and it's not ever given like a larger amount to us or anything like that. So we have something actually saving that data. And as we all know, and we probably heard these words before, that is a database. So what happens here is that our servers, our Java servers, talk to our database, asking for information, and then return information to it. This is the structure we're going to continue working on in the next few weeks. We'll see how this exactly connects, probably next class and the class after that. Right now, we don't really need to know about that. I just wanted to introduce you to this structure that we're going to be working with. So if there's no questions about this, we're going to move on and actually focus on the database today. So looking at our database is a very general term to a lot of developers because database, or databases, database I, come in multiple flavors. Not to overwhelm anybody with the information, but you have NoSQL, you have Postgres, and then you have MySQL. These are just 3 flavors out of a lot of them. But the one we're going to be working with is MySQL. If you're asking yourself, what are the differences? Some differ very, I almost said smally, have very minuscule differences, and some have a completely different way of storing data. But the one that you all and us in general need to focus on while we're continuing this class is just MySQL, which uses the SQL language. So knowing that, let's go ahead and start taking a look real quick at MySQL. This right here is our MySQL workbench. what this does is that it starts a database server for us to work on and save data inside of it. For anybody who's asking questions, because I did see some of that, I apologize again, I was off the grid for a bit, but I saw that there were some questions about what versions to install. The one that I'm going to be working with for all of our examples is 8.0.18. That's built for Catalina on my Mac. However, look at the version numbers and see which one is best for your machine. Do keep in mind that that documentation was written a few years ago, so sometimes those version numbers have to increase in order for us to have an acceptable version of the software, aka MySQL Workbench. So again, this one is 8.0.18 for Catalina. And I believe if you still have Mojave, you can use 8.0.17. So I just want to make sure that there's no questions about that. Because I did see a little bit of just questions surrounding that on Slack. All right, sounds good. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm just going to start creating a database. Don't worry about anything over here. These are schemas, aka you can just think of them as databases. And I'm just going to create a new one. So I pressed this 3 circular cylinder icon up here. This is the typical icon you will see for databases or for schemas. What I'm going to do here is that, as always, I'm going to use pets as an example. So I'm going to just call it my pet database. Type in the schema name. I don't change anything, press apply. And what this does is it's going to show me the query it's going to run to create my database, which in this one is just create schema and then the name of my database or schema. And then I'm going to press apply. Then it says that everything went A-OK and I close it. And one very, very important thing, if there's ever a time to listen right now about MySQL Workbench, it's right at this exact moment. And when you create your database, first thing, press refresh all. Then go find your pet database or whatever database you're creating and double click on it until it's bolded. This will help you because if another one is bolded and you run a query, which we'll learn about here soon, you might have issues. Well, I'm sorry, you will have issues most likely. So make sure it is bolded. All right, so we've created our database here, but we have no idea how to add information to it or do anything with it. So let's go back and keep going. Real quick, before we start diving more and more into MySQL, we're going to go over some past languages. Like we said, this is lecture 13 from the second unit. You all have learned a ton of information and a ton of technical expertise that we're continuing to mature class by class. And the first one we all learned was JavaScript, aka /TypeScript. And things that we learned in that was const and lets. These are those variable types that we typically used in JavaScript. Then you came and I came in like a wrecking ball and we started talking about Java. Java has integers, ints, booleans, strings. Again, these are 2 languages that we've learned. And like I said in the beginning of class, SQL is a brand new language. So that means we need to learn, first things first, some variables. SQL has its own variety of variables in it. That being said, SQL has ints as well, all caps typically. They have booleans, but it's called a bool. And then they don't actually have the concept of strings. Instead, they have something called a varchar, which is its concept of a string. So remember, SQL is a new language, and it has its own kind of syntax. It has its own kind of variables. So it's never a bad thing to go ahead and just look up some of the very typically used variables that we would use. In this case, integers, booleans, and varchars. And most of the examples you'll see here today, these are the ones we're going to be using. But let's look at a very special part of this one, the varchar. We know a lot of our information that we get from users is typically going to be in the variety of a string or just text, a long piece of text, usernames, emails, all of that fun stuff. So let's take a look at what we do with that. Bringing in the varchar here. What we need to do is that varchars are kind of like arrays. We need to create a size of the varchar. A typical size you'll see is 255. In older versions of MySQL, 255 was actually the largest length of a varchar it could be. So sometimes you'll see 255 in a lot of examples. In newer versions, like the ones we're kind of working with, we can actually go up to 16,000. I forget what the actual number is, but about 16,000 characters. but hopefully we won't be working with too much of that. So I won't go over 255 typically in most of my examples. But the big thing to point out here is that a varchar will need a size. So a quick example is, if we need to create a varchar for the week, can someone tell me the maximum length of what the varchar should be?
7 or 6.
I actually had to look it up, and I literally had to spell it each day. Wednesday, 9 characters.
Ooh.
I know, I was like, that's almost like a good speed trivia question. It's like, what is the longest day? It's Wednesday, but like, I don't remember how many characters. But anyway, you'd size your varchar at a length of 9. So this would just be an example. If you're taking in the days of the week into your database, which we'll see here momentarily, you just create a varchar of 9, aka a string that can't be larger than 9 characters. So talking about variables here, the varchar, the int, boolean, any questions about this before we start getting a little bit heavier?
Does a space count as a character?
It does, yes. So if you misspell your day of the week with the space inside of it on the either sides, technically what happens is that the end of your varchar will get truncated. So if you say space and then try to type in Wednesday, the Y would get truncated or it would never show up in the database. So yes, you're absolutely right. A space does count as a character. So do all other special characters, dashes, exclamation points, etc. Great question. Any other questions? All right, let's keep going. So let's just talk about what a database is, just so we can be able to picture it in our minds. So picture an Excel sheet, basically, a 2-dimensional things of cells that we can put stuff into. If you haven't used Excel, go ahead and feel free to open it up or go to OpenOffice and take the free gander at just like what an Excel sheet looks like, because that's very close to, or very similar to what a SQL database will look like. So at the very top, just like Excel sheets, we have columns. These columns are the headers, basically identifying what the data is below. And to the left-hand side, we just have our rows of data. So we have our headers telling us what our data actually is, and then our rows actually contain that information. Taking it one step further, we bring in our dogs. So I want to create maybe an ID column for my dog, a unique identifier, a name for my dog, of course, an age, and maybe an owner name. So this would typically be a structure of our database in a very, very overview sense. Now, one thing I do want to point out here that's very, very important about databases is that it has an ID column. The majority of tables you will work with in SQL databases will have an ID column in it. This is because we need unique identifiers for all of our information. If your dog application took off tomorrow, the possibilities of having the same name, the dog name, the same age, and the same owner name is highly probable. Therefore, to make sure we know what row we're on, we have a unique identifier, we have a unique identifier column in our database. So in the majority of tables you'll see an ID column. The question I got on Slack was that, so if you had you knew it was gonna be days of the week, do you have to hard code it to be a set of 9 because that's all of the characters you think you'll need, or can you do 12 to give it a little bit of space? And if I get that wrong, just let me know. But the answer is yes, you can technically do that. But remember, data takes up space. And Google or a large organization that has a lot of information, if you take 4 characters, which won't look like much in our databases, but those four characters times 2 million different emails, you're adding up a lot of space that you didn't need to take up in your database. So it's best to find out what you could fix your varchar to and try to get it as close as possible. So just letting you know, data costs space, time, and money. So make sure we always try to optimize it as much as possible. But of course, as we're working with it, if we oversize something, it's not going to hurt anything. All right, so let's keep going. I'm going to fill in actually information for my database. So I'm going to say my ID is 1. The name of my dog will be Stark as always. The age is 7 and the owner is Kyle. Simple enough. This again is what a very overview look of a database will look like. But let's actually look at what's going to happen. We'll fill in more information, but let's actually see how we create this. Let's go ahead and create our first table. Now, before we start these are going to be queries. We're going to have a lot of keywords here to create different things, whether they be tables, whether they be rows or other things. So before we start, don't feel like you have to remember all of these queries off the top of your head. Feel free to write down what each of these keywords do. And also the slides for today's lecture will be on the Google Drive. If you need that link, just let me know and I will always send it to you. But it's great to just write down what each of these do, take those notes and try not to overload yourself with all these queries at once. So let's create our first SQL query. How we start creating a table is we use the keyword create. Self-explanatory, right? The second thing we want to create a table, so the next keyword we would use is table. Then after that, we put in the table name and then a parentheses. When we create a table, again, we need to create those columns we just talked about. So to do that, we need to just label some columns that we want to add to this table. We said we wanted the ID, which is going to be an integer. I want to pause real quick and I want to point out that I didn't put ID with a capital I and a D there, and I used the word dog underscore. Why did I do this? To add a little bit more description into my columns. Just putting ID there or putting name there is pretty general. And as our data grows, it's not something that you're going to want and will cause a headache if you're too general. So a lot of the tables that I'll create, I'll put a very definitive keyword before something more general. So therefore it's my dog table. So I said dog underscore ID. And of course, again, it's going to be an integer. So int, all caps. Moving on, we have our dog name. Who can tell me what this data type is going to be?
Varchar.
Varchar, very good. And I'm just going to make an arbitrary amount. Again, going to your question, Kim, I don't know exactly how long a dog's name will be, but I don't want it to be over 50 characters because honestly, that's a very long dog name. A dog's age, anybody?
Int.
Very good, int. And then finally the dog owner, which again, will be that varchar. This time, human names can be a little bit longer, so I'm just gonna put that as 100. How did I pick these numbers? They're literally arbitrary numbers that I just came up with from personal opinion. No math involved, just thought a person's name shouldn't be over 100. And then of course we close our parentheses. What this does is when we run this query, which we'll see here in a second, it creates that table once again. And puts in these columns at the top. So we have dog ID up there, dog name, dog age, and dog owner. But we also have an empty table here now with just columns. So we set up our table, we don't have any data inside of it. Ironically, sorry if everyone hears barking in the background, I have 3 dog companions this weekend, which I'm very excited about. But anyway, one is a corgi and it's just hilarious. All right, so we built our table, but now we need to actually provide information inside of it. So the first word we use is insert. We're going to insert data into our table. Into, of course, being the next keyword, and then we say the table name. It's almost like plain English. I want to insert into my dog table certain information. So then I use the next keyword as values. Inside of there, I need to provide information. So in my parentheses, I line up my information exactly how my columns are. You'll see 1 here for dog ID, Stark for the dog name, 7 for the dog's age, and Kyle for the dog owner. These values then, when you run this query, will be inserted into the table. This is how we can start building our table full of information that can be utilized later. Now, we just covered 2 big queries, how to create a table and how to insert data into it, as well as a lot of different new words that we will have to be using to do this. So any questions about this up until this point?
I got a question. So I kind of noticed a difference in the syntax between the textbook and the documentation on W3 Schools. and it seems like sometimes the lines have commas and sometimes they don't. Is it something that's not important?
It depends on where those commas are. Sometimes they're extremely important, but I'm drawing a blank of the example you'd be questioning the comma placement. If you could, feel free to send me that example that you saw in W3.
Okay.
As that's happening, any other questions? All right, so we've done this. So let's go ahead and create our tables. So what I'm going to do is that up here, I press this paper button, and it creates a new SQL file for me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start creating my table. So what word do I start with to create my table?
Create table.
Very good. And I already spelled create wrong. We're doing great here. Table and my dog table. All right. We need to start with the dog ID. So and I'm in Java mind, Java mode. There we go. We always have those parentheses. So now we need to actually be providing some column information. Who can tell me? What was that? Who can tell me how to create a dog ID column?
Dog ID int.
Very good, int, and then we have that comma there. Very good.
Dog name varchar.
Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. I heard two voices there.
Dog name varchar.
Very good. Dog name varchar. Was there somebody with a question?
Dog age int.
Very good. All right, dog age. If there was somebody with a question, feel free to Slack me, or feel free to shout it out. And then our final one was our dog owner. We had a varchar of 100. Very good. Yep, varchar. Awesome job. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this lightning bolt up here, and we're going to run it. Once we run this, we see that over here, nothing has changed because MySQL Workbench likes us to refresh our stuff all the time. So we come down here, refresh, and now we see our table. Remember, refreshing and making sure our correct database is bolded are two very important things.
Question. I saw you refresh all with a right click earlier. Is that just anywhere outside of the file tree?
So yeah, if I click down here, right click, refresh all, refreshes all of my my schemas. If I do it specifically on one, it will refresh that one.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Any questions about creating that table? Otherwise, we're going to move on to insert. All right, insert. We start with insert. And then what's our next keyword after insert?
Insert into.
Very good, into. And then what do we say?
Table name, my dog table.
Very good. So you're going to see actually two different ways of people doing this. You'll see just the table name. And sometimes they'll put the actual database name in front of it. So say pet database dot. So I just want to let you know that you might see both of these actually out in the wild. The next keyword was values. And then we actually have to provide the value. We said one, Stark, 7, and then Kyle.
Can we bring back Waggy? I liked Waggy's name.
Waggy? I will make sure that Waggy makes an appearance here. Oh, I love my notes after lecture. All right. So what I'm going to do here is something different. I wrote 2 queries in here, but I don't want to recreate a table up here. So what I do is I highlight an individual query and I press the lightning bolt after that. It will only run what's highlighted. So this saves me from creating multiple different SQL files because it adds up very quickly. So you'll be seeing me do this tonight. Once we actually run a query, what do we have to do?
Refresh.
Refresh. Majority of the time, you want to refresh just for a good safety measure. So one thing I'm going to do here is that I want to now check if my insert actually worked. So I go up to my dog table and I see this icon, this little grid icon. I click on that and it automatically runs a query for me up here that pulls back my information. So just wanted to see if that insert actually worked, and it looks like it did. We'll talk about selects here in a little bit, but I just wanted to show you that our insert did work. If there's no questions about this, we will keep going. All right. So we're going to now go ahead and, actually I forgot where I was. There we go. What we're going to do, so if we have a database, or I'm sorry, if we have a table here that we just created, and we wanted to add more information to it because our application is blowing up. Now our dog owners, or whoever's on our dog app that's taking in all this information, wants to know more things. Maybe is or is not the dog on our app a good boy or a good girl? So let's go ahead and add that column in. We want to if we want to alter a table, what we use is the keyword alter. Then we say we want to alter the table. Of course, we provide the table name after that. And then we say add. I want to add a column called is good dog. And then you, of course, for every column, you have to have a data type. So you say bool. Of course, if you want it to be enter another varchar, that's what you would insert there. So this is how we would insert a new column into our table. When that happens, we get our table and is good dog, the column is created. It's added to the far right. When this happens, and if we already have information in there, which we already did, we had start, we just inserted that in there. What happens, and this is very important to see, is that it will add a null there. We'll have a null in our data. It does this by default. So you're going to have an absence or of nothingness of information in that new column if there was already data there. So let's go ahead and see how we would kind of remove that. What we want to do is update this row now. So of course we use that keyword update. And we want to say we want to update the table, my dog table. And we want to set is good dog now to false. We want to get rid of that null and put false in there. And yes, I'm sorry, but Stark is not a good dog. Mainly for, this is completely for example purposes. I know Stark is going to be a definitely good boy. So just saying for false, just putting that out there for an example, but not true at all. Anyway, we use set is good dog, the actual name of our column, equal to the Boolean we want to set it to, because that's our data type. If we try to set it to a different data type, we would get an error. One more thing we have to do is that we need to tell anywhere in our table, our dog table, what we're talking about. What do we want to set to false? Who do we want to set to false? So that's why we use one more thing. We use the keyword where, and it's just like a conditional, where ID equals 1. Sorry, where dog ID equals 1. That is a typo. So where dog ID equals 1. When we run this query, what happens is kind of interesting. That null will be updated to a 0. It won't actually say false in your column. It will be a 0 for false and a 1 for true. So just wanted to point that out. Let that soak in. That false will be 0, true will be 1. Sometimes that does throw off people, so I just wanted to clear the room right now. That being said, let's go ahead and run our queries. So what is the first word if we want to add a column into our database?
Alter.
Very good. What's the next one?
My dog table.
Table name.
Alter table. Remember, we want to tell it where we want to alter a table here.
And then my dog.
My dog
Very
table.
good. My dog table. Awesome.
Add.
Very good. Add. And then
Is good dog.
good dog. Very good. And then what's the last thing we need to do?
Equal to bool.
Equal to bool.
You don't have to put an equal here. It would just be bool. So no equal sign here. That's only when we want to assign. Here we just want to tell it this column is going to be a bool. So here we're going to do that. We're going to run our query, and then of course we refresh. I come back here. Oh, actually I can come back to my dog table query, rerun this one, and now we see is good dog, and then it's of course set to null. Since I zoom that in, I cannot, dang it. Let's see, maybe? No, wrong thing. Dang, okay. Well, hopefully, hopefully you guys can see it. Let me set that back to 100. Okay, so we have our is good dog column now. So let's go back to our queries, and then who can tell me what we need to do next to update that is good dog from a null to a false?
Update
Very good.
table name.
Very good. This one we don't need to say table, we just say the table name.
Set
Very good.
Column number.
is good dog.
Is very good. The column name is good dog is, well, good dog equal to false. Where, very good.
ID equal to 1.
Right, but in this case, our column is going to be dog ID. So we say dog ID equals to 1. Again, apologize for that typo. It should be dog ID. So we're going to do this. We run our query. We come back to our table, and then we are going to not do that. Fine, be like that. There we go. And now we see that is good dog is set to 0, which represents false. All right, any questions about these two queries that we just ran? The question was on the channel, what determines when you start a new query tab? I would say personal preference. Query tabs, or these files, can be used to create large queries to run in databases for either setup or for some kind of job. You'll see that actually tonight. You all will be downloading a SQL file into for your studio and then running that to create a database. So the files are if you want to run a certain job, or if you just don't want a million tabs. So to answer your question, do separate tabs if they do separate things and you're going to save them and do something with them. In this case, I'm keeping these all contained here, kind of just for good example purposes, just so everyone can see what we did previously. All right. So if there's no other questions, and hopefully that answered your question, Haley. All right. So we're going to go back here. We're going to continue moving forward. So we have now built a table. We have our Stark in there. We have our dog. So databases are great for putting information into them, but they're even better for getting information out. Databases are there to hold your data and give it to you when you want it. So let's figure out how we do that. We have our table here. We have Stark. And now we need to be able to select the data that we want to see. So of course we use the keyword select. The next word, excuse me, not even a word. The next thing we need to do is define what we want to select, what we actually want to get. In a lot of examples, you'll see the asterisk. What asterisk means in SQL, as well as a lot of other things in different programming languages, is all, everything. So that's why you'll see this asterisk here. It says select everything, all the columns in your table, and show them to me. Then you need to say, what table am I getting information from? So you say from, and then you say the table name. When you run this query, you'll get back a query result with all of the columns and all of the data in there. So you'll get back literally everything with just these magical 4 words. So you've already seen this example over here. When we press that little grid button for our table, we run the select star from that actual database. So we've seen this before. So let's go ahead and see how we can get a little bit more intricate. First, we're actually going to need more data. So who can remind me how we can provide more data into our database? What keyword do we start with?
Insert into.
Very good. Insert and then into, and then what is our table name?
My dog table.
Very good. My dog table. And then what's the final keyword we have to use?
Values.
Very good. Values. Once we do that, then we provide the actual information that we need to. So we have to provide that dog ID, which is 2, Fido, which is our name, or Waggy, you can pretend to be Waggy there, 4 for dog age, Sarah as the owner, and then we now have to insert true here. If I didn't provide that true, we'd actually get back an error in this query because it says that not all the columns are there. So we have to say true. So Fido is a good dog. Again, Stark is a good dog, just clarifying that. So when this happens, what that does is that it inserts our data into our table. Nothing crazy that we haven't seen before. So let's go ahead and run that query just briefly. What I want to do is come up here, get that insert. And feel free to shout out any questions if anyone has one. There you go. I hope that cheers it up. We'll actually do Waggy because that's just funny. And then who's that? Sarah was that. So let's go ahead and copy that. Run our query. We always come back over here. We refresh all. Come up here and rerun our query.
Did you leave out?
I did, and that is what happens. Because I, of course, wanted to show you guys all that error. So yes, you're absolutely right. I left out true. So let's go ahead and say true. So let's try that again. There we go. Now it's actually running. Come back here, run our query. And we see that Waggy is now in there. Perfect. And we see that true is set to 1. So I promise I wasn't lying to you all.
How did you just
All right.
refresh it this time?
In this one, I reran this query to actually get it. So I came back here to the select star and I reran the query.
Okay.
So if I run an insert, if I run an update, if I create a table, I come over here and refresh all. If I run an update or if I run a create table, or what am I thinking? Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, usually the creates would be better. If you run a create, that's typically when you're going to refresh over here in the pet database. If you want to run the insert or the update, you can just run this select star query. You can also refresh over here. It won't hurt to refresh this because in here we'll also have some information that needs to be refreshed. So that's why I'm saying that refresh it on a create, refresh it on an insert or an update. But running this query when you insert information is also just as easy. So really, these are the only 2 options I'm going to be showing today. They're also the largest ones. So any questions about that? All right. Okay, so what we're going to do is that now we're going to get a little bit more intricate here. We're going to learn a little bit more about selects. So select star, we're going to get everything back. We're going to say from, and then from our table name. But what if I don't want every single dog back? That's going to be a lot of information. Again, what if our app blows up? We have millions of billions of dogs, which is a dream come true, but we don't want all that information back in one time. So we need to limit this. What we do is kind of something, a keyword we've already seen before on something else, but we say where. And then we have to, again, this is for conditionals. So we have to say where is good dog equals true. So I only want to get back the good dogs in this query. So when we do that, we'll only get back Fido, or in the database we're creating on the other example, Waggy. So here we go for, this is how we kind of limit our search results when we're running these queries. Let's go ahead and see it in action. We're going to update this and say where is good dog equals to true. We rerun this query and we see now we're only getting back Waggy. Dylan, yes, there is a way to insert multiple rows, but it is multiple inserts. So you will actually see a lot of that tonight. We might dive into a little bit more better ways to do those multiple inserts, but right now, take it insert by insert, and we'll build from there. Absolutely. All right. So this is our query to provide a couple more conditionals. Now remember, this is a conditional. So pretend if you're still wrapping your head around where the where is, remember it's just like if statements. If is good dog equals true, then return back that dog in my search results. All right, so let's add a little bit more complexity to it. What if I want both dogs back? Well, Stark isn't necessarily a good dog right now. Only Fido is. So what I can do is say, or if the dog's name equals Stark. So I can, again, just like if statements, I can add those conditionals on there to get back both results. That if statement with that or would just look like those double lines that we've seen in the if statements. So if our dog name equals Stark, bring back that result as well. So if we say or here, dog name equals to Stark, we run this, we'll get back both results. But a question you might be asking yourself, okay, we have or here, but or's very close cousin, even though they're exactly different, is adding the and. Can you use and here? You absolutely can. Will we get back any results? Absolutely not, because we have no dogs named Stark and being a good boy. So ors and ands exist here in SQL as well. And of course, you can keep chaining them on as much as you want to get as definitive as possible. Any questions about these conditionals and the where statements? All right, let's keep going then. So what if we just wanted the dog's names back? As of right now, we're getting back a lot of information. We're getting the dog's IDs, the dog's ages, the owner. Is a good dog. What if we don't need all of this? Well, like we said, this asterisk up here is telling us to bring back everything. So what we can do is change that to exactly what we want to see. In this case, I just want to see the dog's name. I would tell it to select only the dog's name. So if I come back here, I type in dog name, and we run this. Oh, and I put that back to or, not and. Come on, there we go. Now we see that we get back Stark and Waggy. So there we go. We are getting back only our dog's names. So we're selecting something very specific here. Let's keep moving forward and just seeing how we can get more and more granular. What if we just wanted to get the dog's names and the age back? We wanted two of these columns. Well, for a very quick example, what you do is that you just separate it by a comma. You have dog's name and dog's age. Alexia, was that you that asked the question about the commas?
Yeah, at first it appeared to me that there was a comma after each command or line, as if the semicolons in Java, but I don't know, maybe I misinterpreted because they were like using examples such as select and then column name, comma, column name, comma.
Okay, that might be it. I'm trying to remember if MySQL allows no commas here. So let me first show you dog age. So we say dog age and we rerun it.
I'm also
we have dogs.
The examples in the textbook were like broken down into shorter chunks than yours. So
okay.
like, I don't know what the convention is though.
Well, so the semicolon goes at the end if you have multiple SQL statements in one file. That's why I put a semicolon at the very end. The commas, now that it's coming back to me in the select statements, you don't necessarily have to put a comma between the columns that you want. So this comma right here is optional. Okay. So that was one thing that was that clicked in my head to maybe answer your question, is that comma is very, it looks like it's very optional, but the other things are not. The standard you see here is typically what you're gonna do. One other thing that people typically do is that they'll put enters between each of these just to kind of split it up. So you'll see that as a convention. But the best thing to do is just make sure you have a semicolon most of the time at the end, or just for better practice, always have a semicolon at the end. And then if you want to chop it up because your query is getting too long, just press enter after each major keyword. So select, from, where, things like that. Does that kind of help a little bit?
Yeah, that answers the question exactly.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. Okay. All right, any other questions about this? All right. And of course, this is what we saw. We have our dog name and our dog age. All right. What if we wanted to know more information about the owners? Well, in this case, we would write an owner table. So we have our owner table down here, our IDs, our names, our cities, our ages, and then we have our dog table up there. So great, we can add this information in there. Because of time constraints, I'm gonna go ahead and cheat a bit. Sorry, everybody, I don't recommend cheating, but I did do these queries beforehand. Then what we're gonna do is that we're gonna come back into our queries just for owner table, and we're gonna go ahead and create this. As always, when we create a table, the best thing to do is refresh all. We come into our tables now and we see that we have an owner table. Fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and create some owners. This is going to be an example of running multiple queries at once. So we'll come into our query file here, come down here, and now I want to do multiple inserts. So I select all these inserts, I run it, and I come over to my owner table and I do a query. And we have all 3 of those owners inserted now. Fantastic. So hopefully, any questions about that, doing that multiple insert? All right. So we have our owners table created now. But a question we might be asking ourselves now is, how do we attach them? These tables are not directly correlated in any way. They're 2 completely separate Excel sheets, 2 exactly different databases. If you're asking yourself, why didn't I just append all this owner information into the same table? Because as we know, data can grow, information and knowledge can continue to grow. You don't want a database at any time of 200 columns. It absolutely gets mind-boggling. So it's best to divvy up your data to a certain context. What do I mean by context? I mean by the subject. The dog has a certain table for its information. The owner has a table for its information, etc., and so forth. So how do we attach them? What do we have to do here? And the answer is using joins. Joins are going to be a little tricky in SQL. And tonight, I believe you're going to start diving into this. So do try to practice just a bit. To explain it, I'm going to go and add one more dog into our database. Add Dino here. Not that one. So I'm going to run that, go to my dog table, and I'm going to remove this where statement, put back my asterisk so I can just run that query. As I said, semicolon at the end just for good practice, and rerun it. So we see that we have Stark, Waggy, and Dino in here. Now take very close attention to this because it will help this example understand a little bit better. We have the dog owners Kyle, Sarah, and Paul. So what if we ran a query for the owners table? Well, we see that we have no owner named Paul. So when we run this, Linda and Dino actually have no matching. However, Kyle and Sarah have 2 dogs. They have Stark and Waggy. So Dino is all alone and Linda is all alone. Let's actually see what I'm talking about doing all of this. We're going to talk about joins here. So we're going to create, oh, I didn't want to do that. We're going to create a new query here. And I'm going to do this first one, the inner. So an inner, and I do recommend reading the book for this one because the diagrams they show on that are actually very good. Inners mean if anything is related, then show that. What do I mean by that? I'm going to say select any columns from my dog table when you merge or join my owner table on a specific condition. Again, another conditional. This conditional that we're going to be running this example is if our dog owner in my dog table matches the owner's table of the owner's name. So how many results seeing this should we get back from this query? 2, very good, because Dino, again, one of the dogs, and Linda, one of the owners, doesn't actually have a match. So we run this, and we only get back 2 results. This is called an inner join, where we find what's related, and we return that back, and only those results. So let's keep going here, and why is that so big? We're going to do now one called the left join. So I'm going to copy this exact thing here. So what does it mean by left? If you read those joins, left means this specific table up here, the from table. This is your left table in the joining. There you go. Sorry, computer shut down. So what we do here is that we're going to select everything from the left table, no matter if it matches or not, and then we're going to run this conditional on the right table. If things match, then I'm going to return that as well. So in this case, we're actually going to get back 3 results. Everything from the dog table and any of the owners that match. Let's see this in action. Oh, it would be great if I actually ran a left join. So we select that, we run it, and now we see we get back everything from the dog table, except that we see down here for its owner IDs that we're not going to have one. We're not going to have any data down here for it to match on. So Stark and Waggy actually have owners assigned to them, while Dino has no information over there, so it returns null. This is a left join. Again, it's taking everything from the left table, which is the from table, my dog table, and bringing that into the results. But if it can't match on anything, it returns nulls. So let's see right. In this example, can anyone just tell me what they think is going to happen here?
3 owners and 2 pets.
Very good. Absolutely. It's going to take everything from the right table, which is the owner table, return all that. But if it doesn't have a match, it's not going to show that. So there we go. We have now our right table returning everything. So as we move forward in SQL databases, we'll get more into joins because they are very, very powerful because we can relate information together and build bigger things and better results. So as we move forward, really practice these joins, see exactly what's going on, and get your hands dirty. But I did want to give you an introduction into joins here. So hopefully this clears up some things. Any questions about joins that I can answer for anybody?
So when you did that last joint, it got rid of the joint on the left. It didn't keep the information there.
So this last one that I did was the right one. So it's going to take everything from the right table. So that right table is the owner's table. Okay. So you are correct. It discarded the third dog because it doesn't have a match.
Okay.
So it only returns the owners.
I think her question was what happened to the left query, but it only ran what you had selected.
Thank you.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. Thank you about that. Yeah, if I don't get your question right, please repeat it and tell me I am going crazy and that's not what you're asking. I just changed left to right.
Okay.
Yep. So if I select left here and we go back to the left query, we see that our owner is back. Or sorry, our dog is back. Dino's a dog. And if we run this right query, we see that Linda is back. Again, no match here. These are the left and right joins.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So any other questions here? I know we are on a little bit of a time crunch tonight, but I want to make sure that everyone's questions are in because after this, we are all done with today's SQL introduction. I didn't want to get too much into depth. I wanted to show you all the not the basics, but essentially the queries you're going to be using the most. So again, look up those data types. Feel free to use these slides today on the drive. If you need them, let me know. But these are the queries that we are going to be using tonight in order to complete this and just start getting your hands dirty with data collection and working with databases. I honestly love data, so I hope you do find it fun. So I'm just gonna open it here next for the next few minutes though. Any other questions, any concerns here from anybody? What can I help with?
Is there a
Sorry about that. I think I heard Alexia. Alexia, did you have a question? Okay.
One was me.
Okay. Oh yeah. Anybody who has a question, feel free to shout it out.
I think an easy one. I noticed when putting in a Boolean, you always wrote true or false. I assume because if you would do 1 or 0, it would think it was an integer and freak out.
Actually, let me try that. I believe if we update here, we can set that to, where's my updates? This one. Updates. Let's say 1 here. I believe you can do it between 0 and 1. It won't complain. Yes, you can. So, okay, so what false and true are Boolean is actually a synonym for is a thing called a tiny int, where tiny int is just 0 or 1. So in this case, it's a tiny int of 1. So it's gonna be 0 or 1. So technically you could insert 1 here directly and it won't complain. But I would say for your sanity, and as well as anybody else reading your code, make sure you put in trues and falses because it's just more clear that way. Oh, does that answer your question, Curtis?
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Anything else, guys? All right. Well, I do not want to take up your guys' time for the studio because I do want you to get your hands dirty as much as possible for this. So again, thank you very much all for watching. I can finally see everybody's faces again. This is great. All right. I don't like working on one screen, but anywho, thank you everybody for watching tonight. I hope you all like SQL here. Next time you see my face, I'll finally have my California flag behind me and finally in my own bed. So I'm very excited there. But if anyone has any questions about this, please feel free to Slack me. I have time available on my calendar to talk, so feel free to do that one-on-one. Other than that, there will be a studio review video tonight, so feel free to be looking for that. That will be released at 8:30 like normal. It will be we'll be back on the studio video train here from here on out. So if you do again need that one-on-one time or would want a studio review, please let me know individually and we can see what we can do. Other than that, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and thanks again for joining me here today, and I will see you all on Monday.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kyle.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.